Real-time experiments. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityormamritam Gamaya Aviravirmaedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tena Mam Pahi Nityam Tena Mam Pahi Nityam. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through ourself, O Lord, and protect us evermore from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. Om Vishnurva Tripurantako Bhavatu Va Brahma Surendrotva Bhanurva Shashalakshanota Bhagavan Buddhota Siddhota Va Ragadvesha Visharti Moharahita Sattvanukampodhyato Yasarvai Sahasamskrito Gunaganais Tasmai Namah Sarvada. The Supreme Reality and its messengers are known by various names and various traditions. But as for me, I offer my worship always to the one going by any name and belonging to any tradition, who is free from attachment and hatred, free from worldliness and delusion, who is filled with compassion towards all living beings, and who is possessed of all noble virtues. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So this morning, you give the lecture by asking questions. And so usually it works that there's only time for about 3 questions. And so don't wait thinking, well, I don't want to be first. I have several questions, but I'm going to ask them later because there won't be a later. So if you have questions, please ask them. And if you don't have questions, we'll see you next time. Yes, Sukh, please.
Maharaj, in our day-to-day life, I would like to know if you could please throw some light on ego. Wherever one meets, whether it's a profession, whether it's a religion, any kind of place where one goes and they say, I don't have ego, I don't know what you are talking about. So will you please let us know how to respond in certain aspect of your life? I get very much a sort of what to say, what not to say. When you say the truthful answer, nobody will like to hear. But now I have reached to that kind of a state where I don't say I don't care. I do care with a lot of love and compassion. But this ego comes in between and they say, I don't have an ego. I don't know what you are talking about. Please.
So the question about ego. So let me sort of generalize, say what the ego is, and then the problems with ego and the what to do about egotism. So ego can be defined in different ways. And the original meaning of ego, which Freud used, and his original meaning of ego was the best meaning of ego because it's based on the Latin word, the basis for the word that we have borrowed, ego. And that is the sense I am. I am. So every conscious being has the sense I am. Now, until fairly recently, within the very recent decades, many scientists believed that the ego was unique to human beings, that animals didn't have self-awareness. And as I've said on occasion, anyone believing that animals don't have self-awareness has never been around animals. It's the most ridiculous and unscientific observation that you can imagine. But that was the basis for a lot of research on animals, where animals, their feelings and sensitivities were disregarded because they don't have consciousness anyway. They're just action-reaction machines. And so if they cry out in pain, well, that's just an automatic response, like the fan belt slipping on the wheel and making a squeaking sound. So that, again, anyone who believed that was either deliberately blinding themselves to the truth, or they had never opened their eyes in front of an animal. So any conscious being, including even plants. Plants also, as Jagadish Chandra Bose showed at the end of the 19th century, the great Bengali botanist, showed that even plants respond and have feelings and sensibilities. And so plants and animals and human beings. And so what is it that is the center of that? It's the ego, the sense that I am. Dogs or cats are quite aware of the fact that dogs and cats have a very strong sense of identity. And that sense of identity comes from the self-consciousness. Consciousness is consciousness. And so ego in that sense is not a problem. Ego is just the sense that I am. In fact, that is the window into the infinite. That's what connects us to God. That's where we're one with the whole universe, is through the I am. Because there's really only one I am with many reflections. But if we hold on to just the sense I am, then we gradually become united to the whole universe and to reality itself, to what is called God or other names in different traditions. So that sense of I am is not a problem. Even the Buddha, when he attained to enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he said, as reported in, or as put into poetic literature by Sir Edwin Arnold in The Beautiful Light of Asia, which was based on traditional sources, but it was just his poetization of traditional sources. The Buddha addresses Mara, the tempter, the source of illusion, and says, "O builder of this tabernacle," meaning this psychophysical system, "O builder of this tabernacle, I have found you out. No more will you erect the rafters and so forth, building this psychophysical system." But he says, "I have found you out." So who is speaking? That was the ego of the Buddha. That was the ego of the Buddha. When Holy Mother, Sri Sarada Devi, when she would say that so many people come to me nowadays, I don't understand why, I'm just a simple village girl. Then who was speaking? That was the ego. That was I, Sarada Devi, I, Buddha, I, Ramakrishna, I, Jesus. So the ego is not, or the sense of I am is not the problem. It's what we call the ahamkara, a Sanskrit term, which I'll explain. The ahamkara, a Sanskrit term meaning literally the I maker, which is the problem. And so when spiritual teachers say that the ego is the root of all of our problems, it's not the sense I am, because that takes you back to God, that takes you to Brahman, that takes you to realization, to enlightenment. and that can't be gotten rid of. But it's the ahamkara, the I maker. And Freud went from taking the ego as just the sense I am, which was the best use of that term, to using it for a technical term which lies between the conscious and unconscious mind, and the regulator of the conscious and unconscious mind, and the censor, etc., and the problem maker. So both in Western psychology and in modern spiritual psychology, we have the idea that the ego is a problem. So there you are defining ego not as the sense I am, which is its proper use, but as the I maker. And so what does the I maker do? The I maker, the ahamkara, that takes the pure sense of I am, which is just the light of pure awareness itself, which illuminates all of our experience. Everything that we experience, the whole world arises within the sense of I am. So if you hold on to that sense of I am, that will take you back to the universal, to the cosmic, to reality, that which you really are. And then you'll see that the whole universe is floating in the sense of I am. The ahamkara takes that pure sense of I am and sticks it where it doesn't belong and says, I am the body, I am the mind, I am this person who was born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1950. I went to school in such and such a place. I grew up here. I went there. I studied in such and such a place. It's the ahamkara, which takes the pure sense of I am, which is undefined. It's not male, it's not female, it's not young, it's not old, it's not learning, not ignorant. Qualified degrees, nor does it have a lack of degrees. It's just the pure light of I am, unqualified. It takes that, the ahamkara takes that and sticks it where it doesn't belong and says that I was born at such and such a time. This is my body. This is my watch. You can't have it. This I don't care about. You can take it because I don't care. It's my reputation. Nobody should besmirch my reputation. And this is my profession. And this is my authority. This is my virtue. This is my vice, etc. It's my depression. I'm depressed. No, I'm not depressed. There's no depression in the I am. Depression comes in the mind. It's not, I'm so sad today. No, the mind is sad. There's a wave of sadness in the mind. It's a thought. It's a thought with power, but an emotion. Emotions have power. But it's not the I am. It's a cloud which has come over the mind. If I can step back through practice and realize that I'm the sun, which no cloud ever covered, from the perspective of the limited perspective of us on Earth, we look and see, oh, the sun is covered by clouds. Is the sun covered by clouds? No, that's something that's extreme. As far as the sun is go, that's so local that it's insignificant. The sun is completely unaffected by clouds. And so these states of mind that come and go, depression, sadness, happiness, elation, jubilation, all of these different states of mind, those are states of mind illuminated by the sense I am. The consciousness is always I am. And the problem is the ahamkara, that sense of ego, if we want to, and that's what most people mean when they're speaking of ego, that sense of ego, that's the problem. And so, again, nobody does anything without the sense of I am. The problem of egotism comes, so we can say the ego is the pure sense for my purposes, so I don't have to keep qualifying and saying that, well, I don't mean this and I don't mean that. Let me say it once and for all. For right now, ego I'm using as the pure sense of I am, and egotism as what the ahamkara does. That is, it sticks that sense of I am onto, this is mine, don't touch it. That's my pen. Why did you? I don't like anybody touching my things, and so forth. So that's egotism, and so that's the problem, and that is also almost universal, except for those who have transcended it. And it can be transcended. And so there are spiritual teachers who have tried to teach their students and by crushing the ego, by knocking the ego out. That rarely works, unless the teacher is an illuminated teacher. Only a great saint can do that. Lesser teachers, when they try to knock the ego out of a student, the ego sneaks out another way, and instead of being like a lion that you can confront, it comes sneakily around and bites you in the back. And so my mother used to say that she wasn't afraid of lions and tigers, but she was scared to death of mice. Because where it's going to come from and what it's going to do, who knows? A lion she could take care of, but not a mouse. And so the ego, when the ego is straightforward, when the egotism is straightforward, that's fine. But when the egotism becomes tricky and it's getting crushed from the top, and so then it starts coming out on the side. Because as Sri Ramakrishna explained, that egotism is like the tree in India, the people tree. You see this all over India, especially in places that get a lot of rain, like Bengal, where they're old houses, brick houses, big, once palatial mansions that have fallen into poverty. And now you see these huge trees growing and sending roots down through the bricks and breaking up the whole house. So Sri Ramakrishna said that the people tree, if you cut it down, after a few days a sprout comes back from the roots, and you cut it down again and a sprout comes up somewhere else. You cut that down, a sprout keeps coming up. You can't get rid of it. So the egotism, he said, is like that. You try to get rid of egotism and it comes back somewhere. So what do we do? What do we do about egotism? What we can do about egotism is two main things. And of course, there are different ways within these two categories of practices. One is the devotional way. If we are believers in God and we worshipers of God, with God as person, whom we can relate to, whom we can pray to, whom we can worship, then think that God is the doer. Everything is done by God. And so to learn a sense of acceptance in life. Now, some people, especially in the West, and I don't mean for bad reasons, but many people hearing that, especially in the West, they immediately say, well, that sounds like it's just accepting the status quo, and then there would be no change, there would be no improvement of life. Oh, no, it doesn't necessarily mean that. It doesn't mean that if someone is oppressing you, you just say, well, I've got to accept it. No, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean that that you have a basic sense of accepting life as it is. That doesn't mean that you can't do something with life, but there's a great difference between thinking that I've got to make things happen and things have to come out my way and I want it this way and I think people should act like this and I think people should behave like that and I don't like this and I'm going to get rid of that. And thinking, no, my experience is the raw material I have. How can I work with it? How can I work with it? One is thinking that life is a path that I have to walk down and I have to make things happen on the path. The other is much truer to the real state of affairs, and that is life is a river which is pushing us along, is carrying us along. All we have to do is to participate, not to create, but to participate. That is, if you're being carried down by a stream, you come to a log jam, you push yourself aside. You come to a rock, you push yourself aside. You see a whirlpool ahead, you swim out of its way. You see a waterfall, you do what you need to get beyond that. And so participation is very different from feeling that, no, the world has to behave the way I want it to behave. Why is that bad? Because it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. It never works. Has anyone even the great tyrants of the world, whom I don't need to name, we know them too well, have even the great tyrants of the world been able to make the world behave the way they wanted it to? No. To take a humorous example, because he wasn't a tyrant, you may like him or not like him, but certainly there were certain things about him that were likable. Winston Churchill. It said that he used to go out into to his rose garden, and he would strike the roses sometimes with his cane, saying, "Bloom, damn it, bloom, bloom." So we can imagine that didn't help the flowers bloom. But that's the attitude many people have towards life, that I'm going to make things happen the way I do. And so accepting life as it is, that's a far wiser thing, because that's all that we can do. And then we can work with it, but it's not being responsible for making things happen the way that I want them to. No, it's working with situations. There's a common saying among in sort of a new age thought and 12-step program, people use it a lot. That is, let go and let God. Let go and let God. That's a good statement. Let go and let God, meaning forget about controlling the world. You can't do it. So let the world go as it's going, and let me work with things the way that I can. I can only be responsible for that which comes to me. I can't be responsible for other things. So coming directly to Suk's question, what to do about egotism, and with the problems of dealing with people who have exaggerated ego. So first of all, realize that everybody has the sense of I am. And everybody except for an illumined soul has a sense of egotism. That is, a sense of identity. If you ask me, who are you? I'll say, I'm Swami Atmarupananada. Where do you live? I live on Nandita Drive. All of that is foolish. And I know it's foolish by now. I know it's foolish, but it's what people expect when they ask who I am. And unfortunately, most unfortunately, it's oftentimes what I think. In my better moments, I don't, but in my worst moments, that I lapse into that. And so everybody has egotism. But what can I do about my own egotism? Because that's the only thing I can control. I can't control other people's egotism, but what can I do about mine? Again, as I was saying, if I'm devotional by temperament, I can think, I am the child of God. I am the friend of God. I'm the companion of God. God is my goal. I belong to God. God is the doer. I'm just like the fountain pen. Of course, nobody has fountain pens anymore, the ballpoint pen or the whatever pen. I'm the pen, the writing pen in the hand of God. So as one of our Swamis, Swami Ramakrishnananda used to say in the back there, he used to say that if a writing pen were self-conscious, it might think, I have written so many letters. In fact, I've even written a few books, and my books are very famous. Oh no, the pen is just held by the writer. The pen can't take credit for what has been written. And we are the same. We are the same. So to understand that there's something larger which is moving everything in the universe, something larger than me. I do things, and as I've said here before, I say, well, I'm going to give a lecture today. And so I sit here and start talking, but do I know how I do it? No, nobody knows. The greatest scientist, the greatest thinker, the greatest speaker doesn't know how anyone speaks. We have no idea. And I say, I'm going to give a lecture. Then I sit down and have some idea of a topic, and then hopefully ideas begin to flow and the words begin to flow, and a succession of ideas come. How it happens, we don't know. The tremendous number of subtle movements I have to make with my mouth, the tongue, the lips, the opening of the jaw, the control of breaths through the vocal cords, when to start the vocal cords, when to stop them, the manipulating the diaphragm, all of these things, whether to send the vibrations up through the nose to make a nasal sound or through the mouth to make a non-nasal sound. We have no idea what a scientist can, or even an ordinary ordinary person can analyze and see what it is that's happening, but how we do it, nobody knows. Not a neurophysiologist and nobody else. There are just so many things happening, and it just happens. And yet I say, I'm giving a lecture. I'm giving a lecture. No, that's stupid. I'm not giving a lecture. A lecture is happening. And somewhere within the cosmos, there's this infinite wisdom, which is not expressing itself through my words, of course, but infinite wisdom through which all of us are expressing ourselves. And so, as I've said on other occasions, I say I'm going to walk out there to greet people after their talk. I don't know how to walk. Nobody knows how to walk. We just do it. And yet we say, I'm walking. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to drink water. We don't know how we do these things. And yet the egotism says, I'm going to do it. And so one thing is to understand that I don't know how I do anything. Things just happen. So let me surrender to God. And associate my sense of I am with God. Not I am Swami Atmarupananda from such and such a place and with such and such qualifications and disqualifications. But no, just I am, and God takes care of the rest. And so, yes, I know that I'm supposed to give a talk, so I come in at the right time. How I do it, I don't know. So surrender to God. Let God take care of things. Do the footwork, but even that, God is moving your feet. You don't know how you move your feet. You just know that, okay, I'm going to pick up my left foot. Okay, I did it. I'm going to pick up my right foot. I did it. How? God only knows. I don't know. There was some great wisdom within the universe that is moving everything. And so to surrender to that. And the other way, I said there are two basic, large ways. One is devotional. And for those who are God-oriented, that is, the God-centric spiritual path, that's the easiest way, is to surrender to God. And for those on the path of knowledge who seek not God through a loving relationship, but who seek a state of consciousness, a state of enlightenment through the path of knowledge, through knowledge, not intellectual knowledge, but direct experience of reality as it is, then to know in a similar way that nature does everything. I do nothing. I'm just the light which illuminates the world of experience. The whole world of experience arises within the light of consciousness which I am. But I don't do anything. Everything is done by the mysterious forces of nature. So as I've referred on occasions to that holy man that stayed in the garden of Dakshineshwar during Sri Ramakrishna's lifetime, at one short period during Ramakrishna's lifetime, Sri Ramakrishna would say he would come out of his hut, his kutir, his little cabin where he would meditate in the Panchapati in Dakshineshwar. He would come out in the morning and in the evening, twice a day, and he would look around and clap his hands and say, "Oh, Mother, what a wonderful Maya you have created." That is, Maya meaning nature, it means illusion, it means the creative power, all of those things together. All of this that we see, all of the delusions that I have, thinking that this is matter rather than recognizing it as divine reality, appearing as matter. All of that is Maya. And so he would come out and clap his hands, dance and sing in ecstasy, saying, "Oh, Divine Mother, what a wonderful Maya you have created." And finally, let me say that as far as other people go, we have no control over other people's egotism. And so if somebody is behaving in a way that we think we need to say something because it's becoming troublesome, then we can say it. We can tell them, but we can't make anybody behave. We can only tell people that, look, that's not proper. That's about as far as we can go. Now, of course, if we're parents or if we have responsibility for dependents, that's different. Then, of course, we have to give training. The idea which grew especially in the 60s when I was approaching a young manhood in my teens, the 60s, the idea that people don't need training, just let people do whatever they want to. No, that was found to be not a way to raise kids. But on the other hand, being overbearing is not right either. So children need direction, they need guidance just in order to grow up and to know what is what. And that's how children are enculturated. They learn how to behave, how to interact with people, tools which they have to be successful adults. But other people that are not our dependents or that are not our employees or people working under us in our department, we can't control them. And so at the most, we can tell people when they are being offensive or something is to give them feedback, but then it's up to them to change. So, next question. Yes, Sanchali. What's that? Oh, yes. Prepared for a loud noise. Okay, Sanchali here. Okay.
Maharaj, I guess I have to hold it.
Yeah, hold it right like that. That's right.
I was just wondering, what are your thoughts about the wave of Hindu fundamentalism that's washing India right now?
What do I think about the wave of Hindu fundamentalism which is washing over India right now? I have always taken the position that as though I've lived in India for 14 years altogether, and am intimately acquainted with the country, have traveled around and have been a Hindu monk for 50 years, 50 years. But because I was not born, it's not my place to comment on the social situations in India, unless it's just to explain something to somebody. But to say this is right and this is wrong, that's not my place. Because and Swami Vivekananda made that clear that he didn't want that to happen, because, as he said, there's a tendency among Western people, not just Americans, but all Western people, Western civilization, to think everybody should do things the way that we do them, and to be full of commentary on what India should be doing, how they should fix their problems, not looking at our own, but thinking, oh, look at all those problems in India, and this is what they should do. In fact, I've even known people, good people, who came to visit India, and immediately they started saying, well, why don't they do this and why do they do that? In America, we do it this way, and in America, we do it that way. So I don't give commentaries on such things, but I will say a little bit about the question, and hesitantly and without going deeply into the issue. First of all, my feeling is that we're stuck with the word now, but fundamentalism is not a good term for what is going on in India. That's not Hindu fundamentalism. Fundamentalism has a particular context and a particular meaning. Fundamentalism means that you go back to fundamentals, which is that the Bible is the Word of God. Everything in the Bible is literally true, that God made the world in 6 days, and so on. There are people in India, and I could mention groups, but I won't. Some of you may know who I'm talking about, but there are some groups who have that kind of view of the Hindu scriptures, who believe that everything in the Hindu scriptures is literally true. That's hard to support with the Hindu scriptures. The Christian scriptures are just one Bible, and even within it there are a lot of contradictions. But in the Hindu scriptures there's multiple versions of everything that ever happened, and contradictory versions of whatever happened. And so to take the Hindu scriptures as literally, historically true in every detail, then you get into trouble quickly. For instance, there's one famous teacher in the 20th century, Hindu teacher, who said that the Srimad Bhagavatam says that the world of the sun is closer to the earth than the world of the moon. Therefore, scientists are deluded to think that the sun is further from the earth than the moon is. Well, that's foolishness. To deny the obvious evidence that the sun is much further away from the earth than the moon, and to say, well, because the Srimad Bhagavatam says, and the Bhagavatam wasn't even talking about the sun and the moon, it was talking about Surya Loka and Chandra Loka, the worlds, these worlds of existence, separate planes of existence. So, but that kind of fundamentalism in India is rare. Even Shankaracharya says that the purpose of the scriptures, even the Vedas, he says, is not to give knowledge of this world. And he says, therefore, if your own observation contradicts and finding an experience contradicts the scriptures when talking about the nature of this world, then follow your experience, because the purpose of the Vedas was not to tell you what this world, how it's made. The talk about this world is just to relate it to spiritual reality. Not because it's up there, but in our thinking, we think up there means transcendent. So he said that the purpose of the scriptures is to tell that which is not accessible to the senses. That I am the light of pure consciousness which illuminates the whole universe. That's not common knowledge. That's not knowledge that our senses gives us. That's knowledge which is revealed in higher states of consciousness and revealed in the great scriptures. So from ancient times in India, that kind of fundamentalism was rare. Present but rare. And so when you say that Hindu fundamentalism gives the idea of Christian fundamentalists or Islamic fundamentalists, also those who are called Hindu fundamentalists with rare, such rare exceptions that they're the exception that proves the rule, they're not out to go around and kill everybody except for themselves. And so all of the ideas that fundamentalism raises in the modern mind, to apply that to Hindu nationalists is a very, very wrong, it brings up all of the wrong associations. Now, as far as Hindu nationalism goes, which is a phenomenon in India, that has its good aspects and its bad aspects. That a country, to be a country, has to have some sort of unifying principle, otherwise it doesn't last. What happened to Yugoslavia? As soon as the pressure to hold it together was gone, it fell apart because there was no unifying principle other than Tito, General Tito. He held it together. The Soviet Union, as soon as the party system dissolved, then parts started separating out and wanting to be independent, and that's still going on because there was not a unifying principle other than just the desire to have an empire. America itself is in danger of forgetting its unifying principle, but still, there is a unifying principle in America, and people from so many different parts of the world have come because of this, and that is the constitutional principles on which it's founded. And so there is a unifying idea, and it's a very broad idea. It's not a narrow idea, it is a broad idea, that an American is someone who holds to these constitutional principles, certain basic principles. There are people nowadays, including even great minds like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who say that, well, the American Constitution is very faulty, that people shouldn't imitate the American Constitution. They should look more to the European Union and other such places with their more advanced, more modern constitution. The problem with that is, yes, the American Constitution has problems. For one thing, it has enshrined in it slavery, which of course we don't want, and other certain ideas which may be outdated. But the greatness of the American Constitution, one of its greatnesses is that it's a relatively simple document. It's a very small constitution. It's easy to read, in just a short time. You sit down on a chair and you can read the whole thing. doesn't take long at all. Whereas many modern constitutions are huge documents where they try to detail everything. That's a mistake as a unifying document to hold a country together, because a simple statement which states just certain basic principles allows for flexibility. So that, yes, the original Constitution, and still the Constitution, it has things in there about slavery. But the country, thankfully, has grown out of slavery. And so it allows for that sort of growth and development and flexibility. So all of this is to say that, I'm getting off on a tangent, but every country needs something which unifies it. America is unified by a constitution. And you see in the recent times, like with the impeachment hearings, the recent impeachment hearings, not to bring it up in a political context, that I don't want to do, but to say that you see the witnesses that were called. Several of them were immigrants or children of first-generation immigrants. And the amount of devotion that they have to the principles of this country and to the principles of the Constitution, that's why the immigrant communities in America are so important, because they choose to come here and choose to dedicate themselves to those principles. Whereas people who were here for many generations, they gradually forget and become careless about such things. So India also needs some unifying principle, and that was something that Swami Vivekananda thought a great deal about. If it's just, well, we got a parliamentary system, well, after some time, who cares about the parliamentary system? If it's just a constitution, India is not founded on a constitution. Yes, modern India has a constitution, and that constitution has its importance, but there's nobody who in India thinks, I'm an Indian because of the constitution. No, India is cultural India. India is a cultural civilization. It's not a political civilization. It's not a political unity that India has. That's not what unifies India. So Swami Vivekananda felt that spirituality was the only thing that unifies Indian culture, Indian civilization. But what he wanted was spirituality defined largely enough, which he found in Vedanta, largely enough so that it accepts all expressions of spirituality, but with an emphasis on spirituality. And so the final thing I'll say, and then take another question, is that as far as Hindu nationalism goes, I see that as a struggling of India to find its identity. And I see it as a good struggle. There are bad things happening, people killing people for supposed cow slaughter, which they didn't even do, catching innocent people, hanging them, killing people, and so forth. That's a horrible thing. There's no excuse for that, whatever it's called. But again, that sort of thing, you excess country outside of the United States. Lamentable, wrong, but that's the human experience. And so correct it if we can. But as the Western press does, don't point to that and say that's India. No, that's not India. And so Indian nationalism is an effort with some excesses and with some successes to try to come to terms with the identity of the country. And it's also an effort of the Hindu community to come out of a system where the Hindus were and are the majority, but where their actions were more restricted than any other community. Every other community that had minority rights was restricted to the Hindus, and that's not right. Rule does not mean the majority should sit on the heads of the minority. No, the minorities need protection. But that doesn't mean having the minorities sit on the head of the majority also. So that's as far as I'll say on that. Another question? Oh, okay, yes, Jagadish.
Swamiji, regarding egotism, the answers that you gave, one of the solutions was let go and let God.
Yes.
Being in the secular world as a common man, to what extent do I need to accept that? Should I be extreme? Should I be moderate? Or should I Do everything as let go or let God?
Good question. You can be that as far as you want, but wisely. That is, with discernment. I always hesitate to use the term which we use a lot in Vedanta, discrimination, because I've used that in American audiences and people say, well, I thought we were not supposed to discriminate. Well, here discrimination means discernment. so everything we do, we have to do from a sense of practicality. But practicality means what? There's worldly practicality. Well, if you follow this too much, then you're not going to get ahead in life. You're not going to. People are going to walk all over you, and so forth. Well, no, that's worldly practicality. But there is spiritual practicality. That is to see, I have to make my way through the world. I have to accept the world as it is. So to find my way, we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a real world, where there's good and bad. There are good and bad people. There are people who want to help me. There are people who want to hurt me, and so forth. So always to see what are the effects of my actions and what are the effects of my attitude. So I can take that idea that let go and let God as far as I want, as long as I am aware and understanding what it really means, and not thinking, well, let go and let God. So I'm not going to pay my electric bill. I'm not going to pay my water bill. I'm not going to pay my mortgage. Let God take care of it. And if he doesn't take care of it, then it doesn't need to be taken care of. Well, you're not going to be able to practice that way for very long. If in work, there's sometimes when you have to, in work, sometimes you have to scold someone. If you are in charge of a project and someone is out of line, you have to tell them that, no, this is not all right. And so if you say, well, let go and let God, so I'm not going to do it. No, you have to do it. So let go and let God doesn't mean not doing the things that you need to do, that life requires of you. It means changing your attitude and how you do it. And that there's no end to changing that until you come to the sense of complete surrender, where you have the sense of doing nothing, even though you're doing so much. A person who is spiritual may be extremely active, may not be also, but they may be extremely active, and yet they have no sense that they're doing anything. They just see that action is happening, because it's not because I am doing things. No, things are happening, and I'm just aware of it. I'm this silent center in the midst of the hurricane of activity, but I'm still. And so again, just take care how you do it, and then there's no end to doing it. Shankaracharya, he spent his short life teaching against the idea that you could combine the highest spiritual knowledge and action. He said that in the highest spiritual knowledge, there is no sense of doer. And so who is there to act? You can't act. You can't do anything. It's contrary to the state of enlightenment to do things. But what did Shankaracharya do? Who was more active than he was? In 33 years, his life was only, the tradition says, only 33 years. He traveled all over India. He even went to the borders of present-day Afghanistan. He established monasteries in the four corners of India. Not by bullet train, not by mail train, not by local train, not by bus, not by bullock cart, walking. In 33 years, he established monasteries in the four corners of India. He wrote commentaries which are the wonder of the world, several long commentaries on the Brahma Sutra, on the Upanishads, on the Gita, establishing a tradition so that since him all philosophical commentators in whatever school of Vedanta, they all have to comment on those three sets of scriptures. Just recently, within a couple of years or so, 2 or 3 years, the Swaminarayan people, published, one of their scholars wrote and published their commentaries on the Brahma Sutra, Upanishads, and Gita. Why? Because to be accepted as a legitimate school of Vedanta, they had to have that. And so they did that so that they become an independent school of Vedanta philosophy. So that was all started by Shankaracharya. He reorganized monasticism. He wrote texts, besides his commentaries, wrote texts on Vedanta. He took Buddhist temples, which had been Hindu temples, then the Buddhists converted them to Buddhist temples. He changed them back to Hindu temples. He established ritual worship. He changed the nature of ritual worship. That was within 33 years. And he said that you cannot combine action and knowledge. And he was a man of knowledge, a man of the highest experience. He was active all of the time. So you cannot combine action and knowledge. Doesn't mean to attain to a state of knowledge, you have to stop doing things. No, you have to give up the sense that I am doing things. Let things happen. And so if we realize that spiritual life is a path, it's a path, and the progress is gradual. Yes, in Buddhism, there was the argument in Mahayana Buddhism between the teachers of a gradual path and the teachers of a sudden enlightenment. Tibetan Buddhism is an example of the gradual path, and Indian Buddhism was the gradual path, that you gradually work towards enlightenment step by step. Zen and Chan Buddhism in China and later in Japan and Korea, they taught sudden enlightenment, that enlightenment comes like that, just in a flash. So it's not gradual enlightenment. Enlightenment comes in a moment when the conditions are right. Both are true. Both are true according to Vedanta. The development is a path, and a long path of development. But the moment of enlightenment is sudden. When that comes, it's sudden. And so in developing these things, gradually learning how to surrender, and to surrender the sense of egotism. So that's my answer. Any last question? Okay, if there are no more questions, then it's almost time anyway, so if there are no questions, then I will stop here. So let me give a closing chant and then announcements. Om Dyo Shanti Antariksham Shanti Prithvi Shanti Apa Shanti Oshadhaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwe Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shantiredhi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace is in the heavens, peace is in the sky, peace is on earth, peace is in the waters, peace in the plants and the trees. The gods are peace. Peace is the nature of truth. All is peace. Peace alone, peace. May that peace, real peace, be with us all. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all the beings of the universe. So now for announcements. This is it.